Have you ever, like, been talking to someone, of the opposite gender about who's attractive, and, like, you
Yeah.
just feel like you're not even speaking the same language?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
they're totally not seeing what you're seeing, and
Right.
you're like, really? You don't think so-and-so is just, like, the most stunning person ever?
Yeah, you're like, how can you not see this? It's so obvious.
It is. And the YouTube video, the one we're doing the deep dive on today, like, it starts off with this scenario,
Totally.
where you and a friend are just, like, totally disagreeing on someone's looks.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, is there something deeper going on here?
Exactly. And it gets into this whole idea of guy pretty versus girl pretty, which is this, like, term that's been making the rounds online. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's all over TikTok and Twitter.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is super interesting how the video kind of lays out these different ways that men and women seem to perceive attractiveness.
Yeah. Like, they even suggest you can, like, spot it in the real world. You
Right.
know, they talk about looking at magazines aimed at men versus magazines aimed at women.
Oh, yeah.
Or, like, even just scrolling through who people follow on Instagram.
Right.
Like, the types of models men follow versus the ones women follow.
Totally. Like, you start to pick up on these patterns.
Yeah. Like, there are these subtle but, like, pretty clear differences in what each gender finds appealing.
Yeah. And the video makes this point really well. Like, we're not saying one is better than the other or anything like that. It's not about ranking attractiveness.
Definitely not.
It's more about understanding these nuances.
Right. Exactly. Like, all the women we're talking about are generally considered attractive,
Of course.
Like, they have the features that are universally considered appealing. But
There's just that something extra.
yes.
That's certain je ne sais quoi.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that je ne sais quoi can be different depending on whether you're looking at it from a guy pretty perspective or a girl pretty perspective.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of our mission today. We're taking a deep dive into this whole guy pretty versus girl pretty thing, inspired by this awesome YouTube video.
Sure.
And we're going to break down, like, the 5 key differences that the video highlights so we can really understand what's going on here.
Awesome. I'm ready.
Me too. So difference number 1, leanness.
Yeah. This one seems to be pretty well supported by research.
Right, like multiple studies are cited in the video.
Exactly. And they consistently showed that, on average, women tend to prefer thinner figures and, like, thinner models than men do.
Which is really interesting to me because obviously both genders generally find, a slender physique attractive.
Right. Like, no one's arguing that, like, heavier figures are somehow more desirable across the board.
No, not at all.
But it's like, within that preference for slenderness, the female ideal seems to be, on average, a bit leaner than the male ideal.
Okay, so that makes you think, right? Like, what's driving that difference? Is it societal expectations? Is it maybe something even deeper, like ingrained in our evolutionary biology?
Fascinating questions.
Yeah. And they take this even further, saying this leanness thing extends to faces too.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, women often find faces with really strong bone structure and, like, less facial fat.
Right.
More
And
dermal fat.
like, the video uses this perfect example. They compare Gisele Bündchen, who's often seen as this girl pretty icon,
Right?
to Jennifer Lawrence, who men, consistently rank as super attractive.
Yep.
And the key difference they highlight is Bündchen's more prominent bone structure,
Yeah.
which is often linked to having less facial fat.
It's fascinating how these little things can really impact perception, right?
Totally. And it kind of makes you think about, like, the pressures on both men and women in terms of body image.
Yeah, for sure. Like, how much of this is influenced by what we see around us and how much is maybe hardwired in some way?
Yeah, it's a big question.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about leanness. The second big difference they bring up is framing, and this one gets a little bit more theoretical.
Ooh, yeah.
It references Laura Mulvey's work, that feminist film theorist from back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Her stuff is really influential.
Hugely. And she talked about this idea of the male gaze, right?
Right, where women in media and art are often presented as objects for male pleasure.
Yeah. As opposed to being seen as, like, independent individuals with their own agency. And
Exactly. It's like they're there to be looked at, not to be heard or understood.
Right. And the video acknowledges that this is more of a theoretical framework, like it's not something that can be easily measured or quantified.
Yeah, it's not like you can just do a study and be like, okay, this image has X amount of male gaze and this one has Y amount.
Exactly. It's more about how we interpret and understand the way women are being presented.
Right. It's about the underlying messages and power dynamics.
Yeah. So how does this actually play out then when we're talking about guy pretty versus girl pretty?
Well, the video points to things like The use of really overtly sexualized facial expressions, suggestive poses, and camera angles that often focus on specific body parts.
Right, right.
And this is more common in media that's aimed at men.
Okay.
Whereas in media aimed at women, you often see a more what they call agentic portrayal.
Agentic,
So it's
yeah.
like the women are presented as more autonomous, their expressions, their poses, they suggest that they're in control, not just passive objects.
So it's almost like one is presenting the woman as something to be consumed, and the other is presenting her as someone with her own story, her own desires.
Right. It's a subtle but powerful difference.
And they give this really interesting example comparing the way women are photographed in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue
Oh, yeah.
to how they're shown in magazines that are specifically selling swimsuits to women.
And it's a stark contrast, right?
Yeah.
Like in the Sports Illustrated issue, it's all about, objectification. The focus is on their bodies, their curves, and the poses are often very provocative.
Yeah. And it's interesting how they connect this back to the idea that men's perception of attractiveness is often really influenced by things like waist-to-hip ratio.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
like those physical features that are traditionally linked to fertility and, reproductive potential.
Exactly.
Whereas women's assessments of attractiveness seem to be less focused on those specific bodily cues.
Yeah. Okay, so that's framing. The third difference they talk about is this whole conformity versus artistic expression thing.
Oh, yeah, this is an interesting one.
This is a big one for me because I feel like I see it all the time.
Right.
So the basic idea is that girl pretty often involves making these aesthetic choices that are about expressing individuality, right?
Yeah.
Like creativity, a certain artistic sensibility, and then guy pretty tends to be more about conforming to like mainstream beauty standards.
It's like playing it safe versus pushing boundaries.
Right. And they use
Oh.
this awesome example of Emma Stone's short hair from earlier this year.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It was everywhere, right?
It was. And the video mentions that Maine Murphy, an anthropologist who works with him, did a poll about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the results were super interesting.
I bet.
Women were like way more likely to think that the short hair looked fantastic on her,
Interesting.
while men were, more likely to disagree.
Yeah, I can see that. Have you ever noticed that, like, in your own friend groups?
Oh, totally. Like where my female friends will be raving about like a celebrity's bold outfit or hairstyle.
Yeah.
And my male friends are like, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's like they just don't see the appeal.
Exactly. And it really highlights how guy pretty often seems to stick to those more classic conventional looks.
Right, like the subtle makeup, the longer flowing hair,
Yeah.
whereas girl pretty seems to embrace experimentation more.
Yeah, like trying out different colors, cuts, styles,
Yeah.
even if it's not like universally considered attractive.
Right, because it's about more than just being attractive. It's about making a statement, expressing your personality.
Exactly. It's like a visual language.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Now, the last two differences the video talks about, they come with a little bit of a caveat
Okay.
because they're based more on observation and speculation than like hard scientific data,
Right.
but they're still super interesting to think about.
For sure. So what's the first one?
The first one is facial maturity.
Okay.
And their observation here is that women tend to admire celebrities across a much broader age range than men do.
Hmm.
Like, men's admired celebrities are mostly concentrated in their 20s.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Like you don't see as many guys crushing on, actresses or singers who are in their 40s, 50s, or 60s.
Exactly.
Whereas women seem to appreciate, beauty and talent in women of all ages.
Yeah. And they even bring up Margot Robbie as an example.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Like, they say that early in her career, she was very much presented as the guy pretty type.
Right.
But as she's, matured and taken on different roles and her public persona has evolved, she's kind of crossed over into that girl pretty territory, too.
Yeah, I can see that. She's definitely become more than just, a pretty face.
Right.
She's got this strength and depth that a lot of women admire.
Totally.
And it's interesting, the video also points out that the few guy pretty celebrities who aren't in their 20s often tend to look really young for their age.
Yeah.
Like they've somehow managed to defy aging.
It's like there's this emphasis on youthfulness and the guy pretty ideal.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fifth and final speculative difference is facial androgyny.
Okay, this one's fascinating.
This one's really interesting. So the idea here is that while men generally prefer women with really feminine features, you know,
Yeah.
the classic soft features,
Hooray.
women often find those with some, more striking, maybe slightly masculine features more attractive.
Interesting. And this isn't meant in a negative way at all.
No, not at all.
Like they even use the more academic terms for it, like facial masculinity and facial neoteny.
Right. Because it's not about saying someone looks manly in a bad way. It's more about like the presence of certain features that are typically associated with masculinity.
Exactly.
And they use Cara Delevingne as a great example.
Oh, yeah, she's got such a unique look.
They talk about her really striking eyes, but also, she has a heavier brow ridge and straighter, thicker eyebrows,
Right.
which give her a less traditionally feminine appearance compared to, some other models and actresses.
Right.
But their point is that while both men and women probably find her attractive, women might be particularly drawn to her because of those more masculine features.
Like they might find them strong or distinctive.
Yeah, like it sets her apart.
Exactly. It's like a different kind of beauty.
Right. And this leads them to their final and honestly most thought-provoking hypothesis, which connects these last two speculative differences,
Okay.
facial maturity and androgyny, to opposite-sex attraction.
Interesting. So what's the hypothesis?
They're suggesting that the traits that women often find attractive in men,
Okay.
things like a little bit of maturity, slightly more masculine facial features,
Okay.
might kind of carry over into what they find attractive in other women.
You mean like a sort of subconscious crossover?
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe our ideas about what's attractive aren't totally separate for each gender.
That's a really cool idea. It would make sense in a way.
Right.
Like if you're attracted to those features in men, maybe you're also drawn to them in women, even if it's on a more subtle level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to kind of summarize all this before we wrap things up, we've explored these 5 key differences between guy pretty and girl pretty.
Yes.
We talked about leanness, the way women are framed in the media.
Right, like objectification versus agency.
Exactly. Conformity versus artistic expression, facial maturity, and facial androgyny.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. And
Yeah.
it's important to remember, like, these are subtle differences, right?
Yeah, totally. We're not talking about like completely separate categories of beauty.
Yeah.
It's more like there are these nuances and tendencies within what's generally considered attractive.
Exactly. Okay, so here's a final thought for everyone to ponder. Given this whole exploration of guy pretty and girl pretty, these different ways of seeing attractiveness, does it tell us anything about how we perceive beauty more broadly?
Yeah.
Like, are our preferences as fixed and unchanging as we think they are?
It's a great question.
It really makes you think about your own tastes.
Right,
Like,
totally. Like, why am I drawn to certain looks?
right. And maybe it even sparks some interesting conversations with your friends about, what you find attractive and why.
Yeah, I love that.
So there you have it. That's our deep dive on guy pretty versus girl pretty, inspired by this awesome YouTube video.
Super interesting stuff.
It is. And who knows, maybe we'll revisit this topic again in the future as, beauty standards continue to evolve and change.
I'd be down for that.
Me too.
Always fun to explore these things.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining me for this one.
Thanks for having me. This was a good one.
It was, wasn't it? All right, we'll see everyone next time for another deep dive.
See you then.
Bye.